When we got married, I believed that trust was something monolithic, like a stone in a foundation. Either it's there or it's not. But years of marriage have taught me otherwise. Trust is a fabric, thin and strong at the same time. It can be stretched, it can be scratched, it can be patched, but the seam can never be unseen. And recently, I saw the first real hole appear in our fabric. My husband loves cruises. For him, it's not just a vacation, but almost a sport. Looking for promotions, catching bonuses, getting free trips using accumulated points. He feels like an avid hunter in this, and I don't interfere. I'm not a fan myself. The sea is too loud for me, and crowds of tourists are tiring. But I've always supported his hobby, because to love means to allow a person to be themselves. This time, it was a coincidence that he got the opportunity to go on a cruise for free. I couldn't go. Work deadlines, obligations that couldn't be shifted. He sighed, shrugged. It's a pity, but I'll go alone. I thought, well, okay. While he's on deck, I'll catch up on everything at work. And then I accidentally found out, not from his lips, from scraps of phrases, from hints he was going to invite a woman he knew who had recently broken up with her boyfriend. And not just invite, but offer to live with him in the same cabin. I felt a chill run through me. It wasn't jealousy in the classic sense. I didn't cling to his every move. I never snooped through his phone. I didn't check his chats. But the idea that he was seriously considering spending a week in a cramped room with a woman who I knew had a history of boundary issues was like a punch in the gut. Yes, I had agreed before. He went on a short trip with another friend, a woman with whom he had a purely platonic relationship. I was calm there. She always kept her distance, respected other people's families. But A was a different story. My anxiety was not abstract, but very specific. I decided not to make a scene out of thin air and waited for the right moment. In the evening, already in bed, I quietly asked, "Tell me, who did you invite to go on the cruise with you?" He hesitated. "I don't remember," he said. His voice was even, but I immediately realized that he was lying. A man doesn't forget who he invited to spend a week in the same cabin. I repeated the question. He fell silent and we went to bed like that, in silence where even breathing seemed alien. I lay, looking at the ceiling, and felt tension building up inside me, as if an invisible wall was growing between us. In the morning, I started the conversation again, now without any detours. "I'm asking for the last time, who did you invite with you?" He surrendered to A, he said shortly. "Were you planning to live in the same cabin with her?" Instead of answering, he began to prevaricate. He just wanted to introduce her to gambling, to show her how to win free cruises. His voice trembled, and in that trembling, I heard a confession. Yes, he wanted to. If she had agreed, he would have gone with her. I looked at him and felt that there were two people fighting inside me. The first me is the one who wants to scream, break dishes, demand explanations, shake all the details out of him. The second is the adult, tired one, who knows that hysteria will not solve anything. That real strength is in speaking quietly but clearly. I asked, "Why did you invite her if you knew that she would most likely refuse?" He shrugged his shoulders as if it was a small thing, a mistake in the margins. But to me, it was not a small thing. It was a test of trust that he didn't even notice. I paused and asked, "If you could go back, what would you do?" He looked down and said, "I should have asked you first. I'm sorry." These words were both a confession and an attempt to justify himself. I listened to him and thought, he is a grown man. He knows that trust is not a gift, but a responsibility, and yet he behaved as if it were just a token in a machine. "You can try. Maybe you'll get lucky." I told him what I had been keeping to myself for a long time, that I am not naive and understand that even in strong marriages there are temptations. There are thoughts about others, but boundaries are needed precisely so as not to turn these thoughts into actions, so as not to put yourself in situations where temptation becomes too real. I said, "If you ever feel like you're missing something with me, I want you to tell me. Don't look for it somewhere else. Don't hide. I want to be the first one you tell that you're having a hard time." He was silent. He looked at the floor, and I didn't know if he could even hear me. I finished with words that I didn't expect from myself. "I'm ready to lose everything we've built if I see that my trust is an empty phrase for you." I went into another room, leaving him alone. For the first time in a long time, I felt that I was not afraid. There was pain, there was resentment, but there was no fear of losing him, because the most terrible thing was to lose myself in this relationship. 20 minutes later, he came, silently hugged me, and in this hug there was something different. Not a habit, but a request. He apologized, quietly but sincerely. And I felt, yes, perhaps we can still be saved. I forgave him. But forgiveness does not mean forgetting. It means I leave the door open, but only halfway. Let him now prove himself that he knows how to enter through it honestly. And yet, as he held me in his arms, I thought about the main thing. If the fabric of trust is already torn, can we sew it so that the new seam will be stronger than the old one? The day after our conversation, I woke up before him. I lay there for a long time and listened to his breathing, even and calm as if nothing had happened. Surprisingly, it was this calmness that irritated me. I rolled over onto my side, looking out the window and thought, does he even understand what he did? Or is this just a ridiculous mistake for him, which can be washed away with the word sorry? I got up, made coffee, turned on my laptop. There was a ton of work to do, but I couldn't concentrate. Snippets of our conversation were spinning in my head. His confession, his I'm sorry, my threat to leave. And then there was that pause, long and deep, when he was silent, as if he was weighing whether he should apologize at all. At breakfast, he sat opposite me, carefully moving his cup. I'm really guilty, he said, not looking me in the eye. But give me a chance to prove that I'm trustworthy. The words are correct, but the feeling is empty. I wanted to believe, but something inside resisted. The first few days, he seemed to be trying his best. He was constantly texting, "How are you? Did you have time to have lunch? I love you." He brought home flowers, not festive bouquets, but simple wildflowers clearly bought on the run. He began to cook dinner more often, clear the dishes, and suggest going for a walk in the evening. I noticed all this, but at the same time as the warmth, I felt wariness. I examined his every move under a microscope. Was he trying too hard? Was he trying to cover up his guilt with external gestures? When he hugged me, I found myself listening to see if his heart was beating too fast. When he worked late, I couldn't fall asleep until I saw his text with a photo of his office, desk, computer, coffee. A feeling appeared inside me that I had never had before. I began to follow. Not in the literal sense. I did not check his phone, did not dig into the correspondence. But my head itself drew dozens of pictures. Here he is again texting with A. Here he is thinking up how to deceive me with soft words. Here he is looking for another random opportunity. One evening, I met A completely by chance. I was returning from the store, and she was walking towards me, talking to someone on the phone. We exchanged polite smiles, and my inside sank. She was wearing a bright dress with her hair down and looked carefree, as if that strange story with my husband had never happened in her life. I walked past, but my back was covered in sweat. My head was spinning. Does she know that he offered her to go on a cruise? Would she agree? Would she refuse? And most importantly, what did he tell her about me? That evening, I asked him directly, "Have you communicated with A since that conversation?" He looked straight ahead and said, "No, I realized it was wrong. I don't want to risk our marriage for something stupid." I nodded, but inside I felt strange. I believed the words, but I couldn't get rid of the thought, what if this is again a half-truth? Thoughts about trust began to come even in small things. If he stayed in the shower longer than usual, I caught myself thinking, who is he texting? If he smiled while looking at his phone, I automatically came up with who he was texting. I hated these thoughts. They made me a person I never wanted to be. I used to be proud that we were not jealous, that we could calmly let each other go in the company of friends. I always told my friends, trust is the best glue in marriage. And now I myself have become a person who looks for signs of lies in every look. One night I woke up because he had turned over and pressed me to him. His hand was on my waist, his breath was hot and close. And suddenly I felt not only the usual tenderness but also anger. I remembered how he could have hugged A in the same way in the cabin if she had agreed. I slipped out of his arms and went to the kitchen. I sat at the table with a cup of water and thought, why am I my own enemy now? He sleeps peacefully, and I fight with ghosts inside my head. That was the first time I admitted to myself, trust is not returned instantly. It cannot be earned with flowers or dinner. It is a process, and I must participate in this process too. In the morning I told him, I'm ready to give you a chance, but I don't promise that tomorrow I'll trust you again like before. It will be slow, and you'll have to endure my doubts without getting angry or tired. He nodded seriously without his usual joke. I'm ready. And yet I knew. Words are just words. The main thing is what he will do next. And somewhere inside me there was a thought. What if I can never trust him completely again? I always thought that crises in marriage look like thunder and lightning, shouting, slamming doors, accusations. But it turned out that what is much more terrible is silence. The one in which you seem to live, go to work, drink morning coffee next to your husband, but inside you there is a quiet engine of doubt. It hums continuously, even when everything around seems normal. Several weeks passed after that conversation. From the outside, our life looked normal. We had dinner together, discussed plans, went to the movies. He was attentive, caring, even too much. I caught myself thinking that his efforts were like a performance, as if he was trying to prove to me and himself that everything was under control. But one episode shook my shaky trust again. One evening, he told me his colleagues were inviting him to a corporate event, an informal meeting at a bar. I nodded. Sure, go. But something in my chest sank. As he left, I noticed that he looked excited, like a schoolboy going on a date, and not a grown man meeting with colleagues. I tried not to dwell on it. I turned on a TV series and made some tea. But every minute of his absence seemed to stretch like a rubber band. Pictures were spinning in my head. Him standing at the counter with a cocktail, laughing with some woman, their eyes meeting longer than necessary. I hated myself for these thoughts, but they were stronger than me. He came back around midnight, cheerful, a little tipsy, took off his jacket, kissed me on the cheek. I asked, "How did it go?" And he started talking about games, jokes, new plans in the company. And suddenly I noticed his phone was glowing with notifications. I caught a glimpse of the name of a woman from his department, and at that very second, jealousy flared up in my chest. Sharp, sticky. "Have you been texting her?" I blurted out. He froze, then sighed. "We were just discussing the project." I nodded, but a wave of anger rose inside me. Why can't I just believe it anymore? Why does every word now require proof? The next day, I met my friend. We were sitting in a cafe, and I poured out everything to her. About the cruise, about my mistrust. She listened silently and then said, "Do you understand that you are now at a point of choice? Either you decide to trust and live on, or you destroy yourself with suspicions. There is no third option. But how can we trust him if he himself gave the reason? It's his job to regain your trust, but your job is to decide whether you're ready to give him that chance. Otherwise, you'll both end up in a cage. He in your suspicions, you in your resentment." I thought about her words for a long time. Indeed, right now, our marriage was like a cage. We were both in it, and both fighting with the shadow. A couple of days later, the climax happened. My husband suddenly suggested, "Listen, let's go on a short weekend hike together. In the mountains, just the two of us, without phones, without the internet." I was surprised. He was never a fan of active recreation, but I agreed. The trip began awkwardly. We were silent, each thinking about his own. But on the second day, sitting by the fire, he suddenly said, "I know I messed it up. I understand that for you, this isn't about a cruise, but about boundaries, and I violated them. I would like to take it all back, but I can't. All I can do now is be transparent if you want. Check my phone. If you want, ask about everything. I can handle it. But please give me a chance." I looked at him in the light of the fire, and for the first time in a long time, I saw not a suspect, but simply my husband. Tired, guilty, but real. "I don't want to check your phone," I said. "I want to not have to." He nodded and fell silent. And this silence was different. Not defensive, but honest. After this trip, I felt, we are standing on the edge. Either we learn to build everything anew, or we destroy it completely. I decided I will give him a chance, but on one condition, that now we will write down the rules of the marriage together without, "I thought you wouldn't mind," without arbitrary decisions, and he agreed. But even with this decision, a question remained inside me. Will I have enough strength to truly trust him again? The house seemed different after our trip to the mountains. Not because the walls had changed, but because the air in them had become denser. We both walked more softly, more carefully, as if there was a large vase of water in the living room, and any awkwardness could knock it over. But along with this caution came a new clarity. It is not scary to speak directly. It is scary to remain silent. The test, of course, was not long in coming. The world likes to test where it is thin. A month later, my husband again brought home a white envelope with the cruise line logo. He put it on the table without hiding it, without pretending that, "I'll tell you later," for both of us. He said immediately, "If you can't, we won't go. I don't want to make decisions for both of us anymore." I took the envelope, ran my finger along the rough edge, and felt something inside me exhale. At such moments, hugs and loud vows are not needed. A clear "we" is enough. I opened the calendar. In my previous life, before the conversation, I would probably have said, "It won't work. I have a deadline." Now I heard myself differently. I wrote to my boss, proposed a rescheduling plan, collected tasks for people. It wasn't easy, but possible. By the evening, I had a 6-day vacation. "Let's go," I said. Together. The preparation became a small rehearsal for a new reality for us. We chose a cabin together, not whatever they give you, but the one from where the sunrise is visible. Looked at the map of the anchorages together, argued about excursions, agreed that at least one evening out of 4 we would spend without shows and restaurants. In silence on the deck, just looking at the dark water. I still caught myself on thorns. They stuck out in the most mundane places. When he was late at a meeting and sent a photo from the conference room, I automatically enlarged the picture. Was there someone's face reflected in the glass? When he got out of the shower, I noticed how long he wiped the phone screen with a towel, and each time I reminded myself, I chose to trust. Trust is not an emotion, it is an action. It does not cancel out caution, but does not allow it to become paranoia. We boarded the ship in the evening. The twilight was velvety. The warm wind smelled of salt and vanilla from the pastry shop. The light in the cabin lay softly like a blanket. My husband put down his suitcase, looked around and suddenly froze, as if he was looking for the right place for an important thing, and put his phone on the table by the mirror. With notifications turned off? I asked, smiling. With them on. He smiled back. So that nothing is secret if you want, we'll put a response on the general screen. Or here I came up with this. He took a small notebook out of his pocket. Let's keep a cruise diary. Not for Instagram, for us, what we did, what we felt, so that later we'll have somewhere to return to if doubts start again. The notebook was funny, with penguins on the cover. We wrote the first line. Day 1, we arrived. The sea smells like childhood. We have a cabin with a view and, most importantly, with conversations. The second day was a honeymoon. We lazily wandered around the decks, ate funny mini croissants, watched the children chase each other along the bridges. I caught myself not expecting a catch around every corner, but simply living. In the evening, sitting by the railing, my husband said unexpectedly, I wrote A after our trip to the mountains. Sorry it was wrong, there is no point in further communication. And added, please don't answer. She whined, didn't answer. I wanted you to know this not sometime later, but now to say that I felt better is to say nothing. It was not heroism. It was a simple act to close an unhealthy circuit, and he did it himself. I laid my head on his shoulder. The sea rustled like a large, calm beast. The climax came on the third evening in a bar where the pianist played old hits as if each of them was his personal memory. A woman approached us, bright, spectacular, in a shiny dress, with a glass of sparkling wine. She recognized my husband. Well, well, I thought you were alone again. She smiled at him too warmly, like one smiles at a person who has a story. My husband didn't flinch or fuss. He simply took my hand, evenly and calmly, and said, this is my wife, we travel together. Nothing special, but how transparent this we turned out to be. The woman held my gaze for a moment, smiled differently with slight confusion, said something polite and left. I felt something click inside me. Not jealousy satisfied, but the boundary is set correctly. It was not me who had to remind. It was not me who had to pull the right words out of him. He chose them himself without my prompting. At night, already in the cabin, he handed me the phone. Look if you want. Not because you are a controller, but because it is important to me that you feel calm. I scrolled through the screen, not out of greed, but out of respect for the gesture. There was something funny there. A chat with my nephew about which board game to get, messages from my mother with a photo of a cat, a to-do list for Monday, and one short note in the reminders. Call Lena, HR, move the business trip to June so it doesn't overlap with vacations. He postponed the work trip so as not to pass by my vacation window. He didn't say it loudly, didn't bring it on a platter. Look how great I am. He just did it. We spent the fourth day in a small port town. Narrow streets, clotheslines between houses, stalls with coffee and local ceramics. We went into a small postcard shop. I took one, white, almost empty, with a thin horizon line. I wrote to myself, trust is a verb. It must be conjugated every day. My husband asked for a pen, wrote below, I choose us, every day I, and put the date. We dropped the postcard in the mailbox at the pier so that it would come home a little later, when the emotion subsided and remind us of what was real. When we returned, we suddenly began to live in a rhythm not of tests, but of rituals. On Wednesdays, we go to the store together, even if we don't have to. Just to walk. On Saturdays, we have breakfast not on our phones, 2 hours without screens. On Sundays, we do a weekly audit. Who is grateful for what worked out, what was difficult. It doesn't sound romantic, but for some reason, this is what sticks best. Of course, the scar remains. Sometimes it whines about the weather. When my husband is late for a meeting, I still glance at my watch for half a second, but now the scar has an outline, and it is not embarrassing. We do not hide it under the carpet. We have learned to live knowing about it. This is more honest than pretending that the tissues were never torn. One day I asked, tell me honestly, if A had agreed, then would you have gone? He did not go on the defensive. He was silent for a long time, then answered, I probably thought at that moment that, it's okay, we're just friends. I lied to myself. I didn't want betrayal, but I wanted to feel interesting, easy, no strings attached. And yes, I would have put us on the edge. I see it now, and I'm ashamed, not for my thoughts, for being ready to play with fire. It wasn't a blow, it was a weight loss. He named what I was afraid to name myself, and thereby deprived it of power. A couple of weeks after the cruise, I received that same postcard, white with a horizon line with 2 lines, mine and his. I attached it to the refrigerator next to a small magnet. Remember, tell the truth first. Sometimes I glance and catch a familiar calm, as if I had a pebble in my pocket that was pleasant to stroke. The ending of this story is not sugary. We did not become the perfect couple without secrets. We became a couple with tools. We have words when it hurts. There is a stop word when it goes wrong. There is a notebook with penguins in which we continue to write sometimes. Day 87 broke down for pizza in the rain. Laughing at how he mixed up salt and sugar chose each other again. If you need my point, it's right here. I thought that trust was a foundation stone. Now I understand. It's a thread that my partner and I stretch through the days. Yes, somewhere it breaks. Yes, somewhere we tie knots, and yes, the knot is visible, but it is the one that holds when it pulls. One evening, after work, I came home and heard the quiet sound of a knife on a board from the kitchen. My husband was cutting tomatoes and humming something in a low voice. Our little constitution was lying on the table, a list of 5 points that we wrote together after that night. Don't make decisions for both of you. Don't put yourself in situations of unnecessary temptation. Speak immediately, not later. Confirm with words and actions. Remember that love is a verb. I stood next to him, took the knife from him to finish the job myself. He hugged me around the waist and buried his nose in my shoulder. I felt something inside me that had been twisted for a long time straighten out. Did you sew it? He whispered, as if asking about the dress. We sewed it, I answered, and let the knot be on the front side for memory. And we began to eat our simple salad, and the fork clinked on the plate not loudly but as it should, as life clinks when there are pauses and music in it.